Good morning, everyone. My name is Nikhil Swaminathan, and I'm a Principal Product Manager at AWS Amplify. Today, we're going to talk about how to go from an idea to a scalable MVP from day one with Amplify. We'll kind of kick things off by first talking about what Amplify is. So, Amplify offers a set of tools for front end developers to build full stack web and mobile applications. And our tooling spans the entire product development lifecycle. So you start when you with an idea, you start with developing the app. So the first step is kind of configuring the backend, making sure the backend is set up the way you want. Step two of develop is really configuring that, connecting to that backend from your front end, be it web or mobile. And then once you've built your app, you and your team need a way to release the application, iterate on it, test new versions in isolation from production. And we have tooling to help you with delivery. And then once your app is out in the wild, you actually need PMs and developers to be able to manage the application content and users. So let's actually kick things off with the idea itself. So the idea we're going to go with is a marketplace for neighbors to buy and sell goods. Now, how is this different from any other marketplace, you might ask? The whole concept is that it's a hyper-local marketplace. So the rationale is that I'd way rather buy or sell something with someone down my street versus someone random on the internet. The TLDR is a local Craigslist. With an idea, the first step is really unpacking that idea. Now, there's two major pieces to unpacking an idea. You start off with defining the personas. So here the personas are basically residents. And there's a secondary persona for neighborhood admins who are actually managing the neighborhood community for the app. Once you've got the personas defined, you can now focus on the user stories. So, for example, residents can register on a portal once a neighborhood admin has invited them. And then once a resident has logged in, they can actually list goods and then other residents can comment on whether they want to buy the goods or not. Now, for the purposes of this demo, we're going to scope this product down to just these requirements, though obviously you could see how this could expand in scope. So let's actually start off with how we would build something like this. We start off with developing your app. So step one would be building the app backend. Now today what we're going to do is we're going to build the app backend with a new tool we launched at reInvent called the Admin UI. The Admin UI gives developers a visual interface to actually build out that app backend. That involves setting up a data model, defining authorization rules, and why don't we just go ahead and jump into a demo to actually see how this works. Let's get started building our app. First, let's name our app. This is often the hardest part of the project, so I'm just going to name it something generic like neighbors, and we'll figure it out later in the process. Now, hitting confirm deployment leads to Amplify console deploying a backend environment named staging. Now, what is a backend environment? So each backend environment is a container for all the features you add to your app, such as database, auth storage. And all Amplify backend environments come with the new admin UI, where we will begin our journey to further flesh out our idea. The admin UI is an externally hosted console that provides a visual interface to configure and manage your app backend. To get started building our idea, the first thing we need to do is actually build out a data model. Think of a data model as a way to structure and classify the different elements of your idea. Our first app requirement is the ability for a user to create a listing. So a listing will have a title, a description, and a price. Once the listing has been posted, other users should be able to comment on the listing to indicate interest. And now what we can do is we can actually define a relationship between these two models. So every listing can have multiple comments. So we have a one-to-many relationship between listing and comments. Deploying this setup will create the underlying database tables powered by Amazon DynamoDB, and then set up a GraphQL API powered by AppSync to access this data. The deployment takes a couple of minutes because we're using AWS CloudFormation to set up your backend resources as per best practices. CloudFormation is an infrastructure as code service that allows you to version and manage your AWS resources. Infrastructure as code allows you to define all your backend resources in code, store them in your Git repository, and easily recreate your backend across multiple environments. I've been talking a lot about users. The admin UI offers a fully managed authentication service powered by Amazon Cognito. Amplify Auth lets you quickly set up secure authentication flows in your app with a fully managed user directory. Now for our app, users can log in with their email or phone number, and on sign up we can ask them to provide a name as well, and we can set up additional password policy settings, but I think we'll go with the default here, and that's it. Deploying this setup will once again trigger a CloudFormation deployment that will deploy an Amazon Cognito user pool in your account. Now, one thing to keep in mind is because our MVP app will not offer open sign up, only neighborhood admins can sign up new users. Once the authentication setup has been deployed, I can use the admin UI to easily set up authorization rules on my data model. Authorization is the process of validating what a user can access. In the admin UI, you can specify authorization rules that limit individual user or group access to create, read, update, or delete operations on your data. So for example, with our listings in our app, we only want owners to be able to create, read, update, and delete the listing. So an owner is the signed in user who is creating the listing. But we also want any signed in user to be able to read listings. So that way a neighbor who logs in will be able to view all listings in their community. We've now completed the backend setup. So let's quickly recap what we've done. First, I defined a data model with listing and comments, where I defined that a listing can have many comments. I then added authentication and used that authentication setup to further define authorization rules on my data model to restrict access. All database tables and auth resources are deployed to my AWS account using AWS CloudFormation. Now, what we've really done with Amplify is change the conversation from, what the database technology is or what the auth server setup is, to instead focus on the app-specific domain objects and relationships. Our philosophy with Amplify has always been to focus on your use case or job to be done and automatically set you up with infrastructure best practices so you have a scalable MVP from day one. Great, so now we have that backend configured. Step 1B in the process is really connecting to that backend from our front end. So the purposes of this session, I'm going to build a React app that connects to the backend. But what we have with Amplify is we have Amplify client libraries that offer an easy way to connect to the backend across platforms and frameworks. So we have support for iOS, Android, and JavaScript. And within JavaScript, there are a bunch of different flavors ranging from React, Angular, Vue. We also have UI components such as the authenticator, which you will see. So once you've got that backend set up, these UI components you can drop into your application, and they work. They basically work with the backend seamlessly. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and jump into the demo at this point. Now that the backend is set up, let's go ahead and connect to it from our front end. I've already set up a basic front end with a form and table to list all the listings, but right now it's not connected to the backend. As a first step, I need to install the Amplify CLI, a command line toolchain that allows you to further customize the staging backend from your local dev machine. Once that's done, I can then pull the backend definition down locally to the cloud, locally from the cloud. The admin UI works with the Amplify CLI, synchronizing all changes made locally to the cloud and vice versa. After running the amplify pull command for the first time, the browser will open up, prompting me to authenticate the CLI. The Amplify CLI uses the same credentials used by the admin UI to authenticate. So now that the CLI is authenticated, it asks me a couple of questions about my local dev environment. And it automatically detects that I'm in a React project. Now what this does is that in my project, it sets up an Amplify folder. And this Amplify folder now contains all my infrastructure templates. So it knows that I've set up an API and auth. So here's my auth template, and it's also got the same schema that I created in the admin UI. It also generates an AWS exports file, which is used to connect to the backend. API libraries provide a simpler use case-centric interface to AWS services. In order to get our app to talk to the cloud, let's go ahead and set up Amplify Data Store first. Amplify Data Store is an on-device storage engine that automatically synchronizes data between your mobile or web app and your database in the AWS cloud to help you build real-time and offline apps. The Data Store clients provide a simple API interface for querying, saving, updating and deleting data. What it also provides is a way to subscribe to real-time events on changes to data in the cloud. So let's go ahead and see if this works in our application. Our admin UI CMS. Let's go ahead and try to add some data and see if it populates below. So let's create a test listing. So that's saved to the cloud, but did not sync to my client. Oh, that's because when we had set up our data model, we had initially said that only signed-in users can create listings or view listings. And currently on our application, we do not have any auth set up. So let's go ahead and add authentication to our app. Adding auth to an app is easy. It's literally 2 lines of code. The Amplify Authenticator is part of the Amplify UI library and provides an entire sign-in and sign-up workflow in your app. So simply adding 2 lines of code in my application will give me an entire sign up and sign out experience, sign in experience. And now I need to create a user in order to test this. So let's go ahead and create a dummy user. In the admin UI. So I just created test2. And let's see if this works. All right, so now it's asking me to create a new user account, a new password rather. Let's skip the verification. And there you have it. It's signed in and the data has also been synced. So now let's go ahead to back in our CMS and try and add another row of data and see if the data syncs locally. So I want to old stamp collection. $20 for $100. And voila, we have the old stamp collection added on my local host and in the cloud. So data store automatically handles the syncing. If I add data, if I were to be in an offline situation without network connectivity and I added data offline, it would still add it on my device, and then the moment a connection was available, it would synchronize to the cloud. Great. So now just to kind of recap where we are, we have built an app and we've got a full stack application working locally on our machines. And now how do we actually ship this? So we deliver this to our customers with a product called Amplify Hosting. Amplify Hosting is a fully managed hosting service with continuous deployment built in. It also has easy custom domain setup. Our demo is gonna go through 3 really easy steps. First, let's open the Amplify console. So far, we've been working entirely against a staging backend with our local front end. Now, before shipping to production, let's actually clone our staging backend so we have an entirely separate production setup. This way we can test new features without impacting production. Now that the clone has completed, we have 2 backend environments, staging and production, each with their own admin UI links and completely separate backends. But as you can see, both backends have the same categories added. Now let's actually go ahead and host our web app to point to our new production backend. So Amplify Hosting is a fully managed hosting service that offers full stack continuous deployment. All we have to do here is connect our Git repo. So I'm choosing GitHub here because that's where I've hosted the neighbors app. Pick the repository, pick my main branch, and that's really it. What Amplify does is we automatically detect your build settings on the front end, and we also detect that you are using Amplify on the back end. And here's where things get interesting, because we can actually point our main front end to our production back end. What this allows us to do is actually set up full stack continuous deployment. So what this means is that on every single Git push to main, Amplify will check if there are changes to your backend and automatically deploy those, and then deploy changes to your front end, all in a single workflow. Hitting save and deploy will set up our continuous deployment pipeline that will build, and as part of the build, there will be a backend and a front end build, and then deploy and host our front end to a global CDN using Amazon CloudFront under the hood. All right, so our deployment is completed successfully, and we now have a production app out in the wild. Hooray! Let's click on the link to open the site. Oops, looks like we need a user. Now, since we initially set a requirement that only admins can add new users, and this is the first time we've deployed this app, there are no users. Let's go ahead, go back to the admin UI for production this time, and create a user. All right, so heading to the user management tab, let's just create a test dummy user. I'll give it a password. Awesome. Now let's actually see if this front end is accurately pointing to the back end. So add dummy at test.com, password. And there you go. It's asking me to change my password, which tells me that everything is set up just right. And there you have it. We're logged into our neighbor's application. And let's try and actually create data as well. Woohoo! So now we're able to create listings and against production, and this is our production site. As a final step, as you can see, the URL that we create here is not one that's memorable. Let's go ahead and add a custom domain. Adding a custom domain on Amplify is effortless for domains managed by Amazon's Route 53 DNS. Simply pick your domain from a list. So I'm going to use one of my sample domains here. And then define your subdomain rules. You could have your root domain point to your site. I'm using my root domain elsewhere. So for this MVP, I'm going to be shipping this within the Capitol Hill community in Seattle. So I'm just going to call this cap.awsamplifyconsole.com. Now here's a new feature we've launched with the admin UI. We can also set up friendly redirects for our custom domain to point to the admin UI. So this will allow us to have an easy way to access the admin UI without going through the Amplify console necessarily. So this would be caphill.amplifyconsole.com/admin/staging. Hitting save should automatically set everything up. Amplify automatically generates an SSL cert for you, validates that you own the domain, and then activates it. For domains managed within AWS, this process typically takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Great, so our domain is now set up, caphill.awsamplify.console.com. Let's head over to the admin UI management tab, and you see the friendly redirects are also in place for production and staging. I kind of want to simplify this even further, so let me remove the /amplify, and now I have /production will go to my production admin UI, and /staging will go to my staging admin UI. Let's actually now test out these URLs. So we had caphill.awsamplify.console.com, and great, I can sign in to my production site, and that's live, which is super exciting. So let's now try to go to production. and that automatically will log me into my admin UI for production. And it automatically logged me in because it was opening it in the same session. If I were to try opening that in an incognito window, sorry, let's go staging. I would be asked to sign into my admin UI, and the invite process for the admin UI is available in the Amplify console under admin UI management, where we can invite users. Let's do a quick recap of what we've done so far. We started with the staging backend, built out a data model, deployed authentication, set up authorization rules, then connected to our staging backend from our local environment by pulling the project down with the Amplify CLI and using the Amplify data store client library and the Amplify authenticator UI component to build out our UI. Once that was ready, we came back to the console to ship our production version of the app. We cloned staging to production and then set up a continuous deployment pipeline with our main branch from our Git repository. And then finally added a custom domain so our end users can access our site. Great, so now we've shipped V1 of our app, and we are also working on V2 of our app. But in the interim, our users have feedback and will have issues. How do non-developers now interface with users? So what we have with the admin UI is we have a way for non-developers to actually manage the application content. And that's because the admin UI is accessible outside the AWS console. You can actually go ahead as a developer and share access to the admin UI with PMs, marketers, QA testers, and there's two things. There's two things that they can really do. There's content management and there's user management. So with the content, once you invite them to join, the marketers, for example, can edit in a rich text experience the content for your site. So if you have an FAQ list or if you've got marketing content that needs to be updated dynamically, that can be done in the content view. And on the second view, you can actually manage users and groups. So if you have a list of users for our application, for example, the neighborhood admins are the ones who manage the users and groups. So if someone leaves the neighborhood and you want to remove the user from that community, the admins will be able to do it without relying on a developer to go in and update code. So just kind of let's recap what we've done. So we started with configuring the backend with the admin UI, visually building that data model, and then connecting to that data model from our front end using the Amplify libraries, using the UI components, then releasing that app on the Amplify console with our hosting service, and then once the app was released, actually being able to manage it via the admin UI. So really what Amplify offers is a set of tools that span the entire life cycle of product development and help you get to market faster in a scalable way. To learn more about Amplify, please visit some of the resources that are linked on this article. Thank you so much.